Hello everyone, my name is Paul Third, and this week I have a new plugin release for you. This is the PULSAR 8200, which is what they say is a accurately modelled GML 8200, which was a famous 80s EQ made by the legendary George Massenburg. Basically, for anybody that doesn't know, George was famed for basically kind of coming up with like the first mastering grade kind of parametric analog EQ. Also, I will advise that there are no audio examples in this video. The reason that there is no audio examples in this video is because this is purely a video showcasing the features, what's going on underneath the hood, just making sure that everything's kind of working as it should. And my job is just basically to give it the geeky once over and tell you about anything that I think you should know about in regards to a faithfully emulated plugin. So let's get into it. Now, in regards to this kind of recreation, essentially it has kind of a parallel topology in its EQ. And essentially kind of what that does is that it minimizes band interactions differently compared to like a standard parametric EQ, i.e. like FabFilter or Kirchhoff or like your stock EQs. So whilst like one band might match very closely with like your stock digital EQ or FabFilter or whatever you're using, when you then start to add in other bands, the interaction isn't the same. So whilst you may be able to get kind of one band quite similar, the interaction when using multiple bands varies, and I could kind of say it's kind of more analog kind of circuitry. Like a vintage 1073 is what I would class as like an extreme kind of like frequency variation with just circuitry. The PULSAR 8200 is more subtle, so there is slight variations. Again, it's just kind of analog kind of variances, and it's just analog circuitry, and this is the tolerances and the variances that they have supposedly modelled. So whilst you can get close, the filters are kind of unique. That's like something that PULSAR have kind of stated in their marketing, that this unit has kind of unique filtering, which is, I don't know if we can say unique, but in regards to a standard digital parametric EQ, you will not be able to recreate this just kind of out the box. And yes, it is a little bit different to other EQs that I have seen, and I could definitely tell that there has been some analog modelling going on. And you'll also notice, right, again, just being super geeky, that there is a very, very, very low high-pass filter in there, which I presume is a DC filter, which is very common in analog devices. It's very, very low, and many people will say, oh, it's not in the audible range, but if you understand phase, then you will understand that it will change the sound of the low end. So whilst it's very, 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 very low, it does have an impact on phase, which will have an impact on the low end, which again is different from kind of your standard digital parametric EQs. So whilst this component model EQ does have kind of its own style of kind of filtering, there are a few modern enhancements which are not on the original GML 8200. Now this is the sub and the air and also the tilt. Essentially, in a nutshell, the sub and air are basically low shelf and high shelf with like a resonant dip. The sub, which is like just a low shelf, has the resonant dip, and it's like only half a dB after the boost, and the high shelf, which is the air, again has like a resonant dip before the shelf. Some other additional features are the high pass and low pass filters, and also a mid-side configuration option, which again, it just needs to be in every single plugin these days. Every EQ plugin needs to have a mid-side option these days. But another great feature in this plugin is that you are able to monitor mid and side and left and right independently from each other. It's got a little headphone button. In regards to linearity, the plugin is super clean. If you boost some of the bands, you will notice that there is some second and third order harmonics brought in. However, whilst the non-linearities are really kind of inaudible, even if you're hitting the plugin at like -6 dBFS, I still like that PULSAR went to the extremes of still modeling the non-linearities, because at the end of the day, right, even if it's inaudible, if you say you're going to model something faithfully, then model it faithfully. However, disclaimer, I can't say if they have done it right, but there's non-linearities there. That's all I could say. However, saying that, you can get some audible non-linearities, i.e. harmonic distortion, out of this plugin, but not in the traditional sense, not in the way that you would think. Now, you may have noticed that in the middle of the plugin, there is a de-esser, which can work as a normal de-esser, almost like kind of notching a certain frequency down like a standard de-esser. And it's also got a filter mode, which is very interesting because it kind of works very similar to that DBX 520 de-esser that I have behind me. Now, utilizing the filter mode, essentially all it's doing is you're filtering out the detection. It's just like a side chain high pass filter. So you can choose how much of the low, mid and high ranges are not affected by the de-esser. Now, what's interesting to me when I measured it is that it is quite a colourful little de-esser where, depending on where you've got the frequency set, you can bring in quite a lot of audible harmonic distortion just in the high end, which is actually a really, really nice thing. And it's the reason why I love the DBX, is because what it's doing, especially when you use the filters. So for example, if you set that thing like the DBX and you set it so it's only reducing like high frequency information after like 2.5K, then what you'll have is you'll have like a compressor that almost works like a deharsher. It's great on cymbals, it's great on vocals, and it's just like an overall deharsher. But what the saturation and the harmonic distortion does is it almost acts as an extra level, an extra layer of kind of deharshing. That's what saturation could be handy for when dealing with kind of harsh high-end frequencies. However, if you watch this channel and you understand harmonics, whenever you add in high order harmonics that can exceed Nyquist, which is again is like basically your end frequency of your sample rate. So if you were working at 48 kilohertz, then your end frequency would be 24 kilohertz. Now, if you are making high order harmonics that exceed the bandwidth, then what happens is you get aliasing, which is something that we all know I don't like, but it is unmusical, and whether you like it or not is subjective. However, it is not analog. You do not get aliasing with analog gear. Now, this de-essing feature does add in audible aliasing. However, those clever chaps at PULSAR are listening. Finally, a developer that's listening, and they have added in oversampling options. Now, for me, I find that ×4 oversampling is kind of the right level of oversampling to kind of completely make the aliasing inaudible, which is great because it's giving you that option. So again, very, very interesting. There is a de-esser that adds kind of high-end saturation if you want it, which again is another cool feature. However, it does add audible aliasing. However, that can be solved by utilizing the oversampling, which as far as I can see is probably FIR, linear phase oversampling, which means that you could still have accurately modeled analog phase response. And also, before I forget, for all you geeks out there, as you can see in Doctor, now again I've used Doctor because just to make sure that guess in certain plugins, again you'll have a graphical kind of interface, and it'll look like the high end curves and shelves, the bells and shelves aren't cramping, but if you look in Doctor, they actually are. I am happy to tell you that even with no oversampling on, you can have a high bell or a high shelf and you will not get cramping at Nyquist. So again, PULSAR have done a great job at showing me anyway. Again, I'm very, very, very careful because it is a paid sponsored video. I don't want to say that it is factually accurately modeled. However, from the experience that I have in regards to reviewing analog emulations, from the looks of it, they have kind of went into the upper end details to ensure that they kind of get an as analog a response as possible which is always great to see. And for all you snake oil guys, Feitsa will be very happy if he has a look at this plugin, because there is AUTOGAIN in the plugin. Now, in the manual, PULSAR state that they used a C-weighted AUTOGAIN algorithm, as they believe that it will kind of level match in correlation to perceived loudness. Okay, you know what I'm like when it comes to level matching an AUTOGAIN. I want it to be the exact same level. Okay, 0.1 or 0.2 of a dB is, you know, you can get away with, but if you're talking like half a dB or 0.6 dB up to a dB, then I'm like I want it to be bang on. I just don't, that's AUTOGAIN. I'm autistic and I'm literal. AUTOGAIN is like the exact same level. I think when I did a few tests, sometimes it was like half a dB louder, sometimes it was half a dB quieter. But I also like the fact that it isn't always louder, because there are a lot of AUTOGAIN algorithms in plugins that always seem to just make it slightly louder. Where again, I could tell that when they say it is all about perceived loudness, it does kind of seem to check out, because it isn't always louder and it isn't always quieter. And it is genuinely working. Yes, I tested it with the AUTOGAIN on and the AUTOGAIN off. And again, I do get different results. However, whilst I am extremely pedantic and literal in regards to AUTOGAIN, I still do believe that a perceived loudness level matched algorithm is a benefit in regards to the context of a mix, and I can see it being quite a handy, useful feature for many people mixing with this plugin. In regards to CPU, it isn't the latest on my i7. It hits around 5 to 6% CPU on Studio One, and the oversampling algorithms, it's linear phase, so as expected that you're going to get quite the CPU hit. So if you are using the de-esser and you are kind of an aliasing freak like me and you're using ×4 on my i7 laptop on Studio One, it's hitting like 20 to 22% CPU. So just be very, very cautious. That again, it's one of these things where it's like compromises, and it's kind of like CPU versus quality. And PULSAR have decided to go for quality. I personally always think you should go for quality when it's an analog emulation. However, I understand many people would just be like, I don't care, just give me minimum phase oversampling and give me lower CPU. But it is what it is, okay? It is what it is. In regards to other kind of EQ plugins, in regards to my computer and my setup, the CPU is basically kind of the same as like using Kirchhoff EQ. So 5 to 6 on an i7 is decent. I would like to see it maybe be like 2-3%. But there you go, that is the CPU consumption just based on my setup. Again, on my i9, you're lucky if it's taken 1 to 2%. So again, it does vary on your system. If you have a modern system, it's barely going to touch your CPU. I think at the end of the day, overall, it seems to be a well-made plugin. I struggled to find any issues with it. Everything was kind of working for me as it should on Studio One on both computers. Now again, it is just one DAW, and again, it is just 2 computers, and that is Windows. I can't say for other DAWs, I can't say for Mac users. So my advice is to demo the product and you make your own mind up. At the end of the day, I don't want to sway your opinion. It doesn't put me up or down whether you buy this plugin. The link's there. If you want to buy it, buy it. If you don't, don't. If you want to demo it, demo it. If you don't want to demo it, then don't demo it. So there you have it. That's me done for today. My name is Paul Third. Let me know what you think if you try it out, and I will see you again whenever I see you.